Hello guys and gals, and welcome to another episode of Path of Exile 2 Skills. Today we're going to be looking at another freebie skill, similar to the Bone Blast wand we looked at earlier, and this one is known as Raise Shield. Raise Shield is a free one you get for basically just putting on a shield. You don't have to do much more than that. It has some pretty interesting effects, and we're going to talk about why it's a deceptively simple ability and how amazing it is early game, and how you could even potentially build a character around it, which is kind of cool. So first off, let's just read the ability. So it is an AoE melee physical channeling. It does attack damage 80%, not really the most attack damage out there. It has a base critical chance of 5%. It costs 0 mana and 0 mana per second, because it of course is a freebie skill, and you don't have to worry about basic skills are always free. Raise your shield to block all incoming blockable hits. So when you raise your shield with this particular ability, you're just raising your shield. You don't do anything else, you're just raising it. You can move around when you're raising the shield. And any attack that comes in is going to be blocked. Now, the downside of this, of course, is that you will take heavy stun while you're blocking them. Now, if you block a hit, release immediately after blocking when an enemy is close to perform a shield bash. This shield bash is actually pretty damaging. Damaging and stunning enemies, and while your shield is raised, you cannot be light stunned by hits that you block, but blocking too much damage may heavy stun you. You cannot evade with your shield raised, so if you have evasion, it does not work. But evasion instead grants an equal chance to avoid the heavy stun buildup. So if you have evasion, you can essentially use it as a percentage chance to avoid the heavy stun buildup, which is actually really effective. So if you utilize this, I'd highly recommend like an armor evasion class, because armor evasion is probably the one that can take advantage of this the best. Now, Shield Bash causes 600% more heavy stun buildup, which is insane, so you'll very often stun targets when you're using Shield Bash. Shield Bash always light stuns. Light stun, any hit has a chance to light stun the target, interrupting their current action and preventing them from taking actions for a fraction of a second. The chance is based on the damage dealt, up to 100% base chance for hits that deal 100% of the target's maximum life. Chances lower than 15% are treated as 0. Physical damage and player, but not monster, melee damage, and each have 50% more light stun chance. For players, these bonuses are multiplicative. So this one always light stuns every single time. Shield Bash dazes if holding a tower shield. So if you're holding a big giant tower shield, you also get Daze. Daze lasts for 8 seconds, and a dazed enemy will take 50% more stun buildup, and these are also a number of skill effects and other mechanics which interact with Daze for various benefits. So not only do you have 600% more stun buildup, but you also daze the targets, which means they get 50% more stun buildup as well on top of that, which is kind of crazy. Shield Bash cannot be evaded by a target, so you don't have to worry about accuracy. And Shield Bash has a specific damage. So let's talk about the damage on Shield Bash. So Shield Bash deals 3 to 4 physical damage per 5 armor on your shield. Now, in my particular case, I'm using a shield that has 1,847 armor. That's a lot of freaking armor. And if we do the calculations on this, we can take our 1,847, divide that by 5, which we get 369, and then multiply that by 4, which is 1,477 damage on our shield on the top end. We can take that same number, 369.4, and we can multiply that by the 3 to get 1,108. So our damage range on this particular shield at the moment with this skill is 1,108 to 1,477 physical damage being provided to the shield itself, which is kind of nutty. Now, obviously, as you level, you can get more sockets to put in this ability for support gems, and the support gems that I would recommend using with this are things like Steadfast 2, which give you 50% more stun threshold while channeling. This will help you, obviously, prevent those heavy stuns. Close combat is really good because you do have to be within close range to be able to use this. It's a effect that comes out of your shield directly, so you're going to be in melee range when you use it, so it's a nice more attack damage. So Heft is a really good one, so you can get 30% more physical damage. That one's really nice. And then you can also utilize Heavy Swing, which is 35% more physical damage as well. And you can multiply the damage in a couple ways. So one way that you can potentially multiply the damage on Raised Shield is by getting plus to skills, obviously. So the more plus to skills you get, actually, I don't even know if plus to skills actually affect the damage on this ability. Now that I think about it. Like, I know that the extra damage as does. But I don't remember if the plus to skills actually affects the base. Because I don't know if this one actually has a base damage. The physical damage is 13 and 13. So no, it doesn't have a base damage that plus the skills is actually affecting. But as you can see, I do have extra damage from all elements, and I also have gain as extra lightning. So I'm currently adding on 2,500 lightning damage, 398 cold, 1,492 fire damage, and so forth and so on, which is increasing the damage of the shield bash. Overall, it's a powerful ability that you can utilize early on, and it's also an ability that you could potentially build around. Let's go play around with it, see how it works, so I can kind of give you an idea. Alright, so essentially all you're really going to do is you're just going to block an attack. When you block an attack, you get a bash that you can then apply to the targets. So if I just stand here, bash. So as soon as they hit the shield, I can then release, and as soon as I release, I will get the explosion, right? So it's just block, release, block, release, block, release, block, release. Now, because it is a channel, essentially, that allows you to raise your shield, right? There are things that you can potentially get out of this ability to make it even more powerful. And let's kill a couple of these monsters so that I can actually survive while I'm showing you this. So if I'm standing here and I hit, I immediately bash, right? So they hit me, I bash them. They hit me, I bash them. And I can heavy stun just about any target with this ability because it's very good at heavy stunning. In fact, the more physical damage you have, of course, the better it's going to do. And the higher damage your shield is, the better the shield bash is going to work. So it is both, not just one or the other, it is both a very effective physical damage attack, which can be used for stunning, and it is also a very effective defensive mechanic that you can use to basically prevent damage, right? Because if you hold the shield up, you're going to block every single blockable hit coming from, like the monsters. And you can also release it to dish out damage to those monsters as well. So it can be a very, very strong defensive mechanic, blocking attacks, and then it can be a very strong offensive mechanic to essentially apply stun threshold and also damage to targets that are hitting you. As you can see, I can utilize it even on high levels and still kill monsters, even though I'm not necessarily building specifically for the shield bash, right? As a low-level character, I find that it's extremely effective because, number one, it's AoE, right? It's not single target. If you weren't paying attention, it's not a single target ability, it's an AoE ability. So when you release the shield bash, it hits everything in front of you, and it does a pretty massive amount of damage too if you set up for it. And really all you have to do to set up for it is a couple support gems and a shield that has high armor. Number two, you also may have noticed that it does have a really good stun threshold, which means that not only does it work defensively in one way, which is blocking the attacks, but it also works defensively in another way, which is locking down the targets for you in general, right? And it's something that you have for free at your disposal whenever you want. As a leveling character, I highly recommend that you check it out and you utilize it to your advantage because it can be a very effective tool for leveling. As a high-level character, there are things that can potentially replace it. And as you level up, there are skills like Resonating Shield, which are also shield raisers, that have other effects, right? So there's other ways that you can potentially take advantage of raising your shield besides that. Also, if you're utilizing Raise Shield, at the very least, you can also be utilizing Stern's Ferocity. Stern's Ferocity is supported skills... Oh, not that one. Where's the other one? Where is the other one? It's the other Sterns. Hold on. I probably have it on one of my other characters, and I was thinking I was on this character. It's called Stern's Mountain. Stern's Mountain is an ability that basically allows you to get additional damage for a ability that is not raising your shield. By having an ability that is raising your shield, if that makes any sense. So when you utilize this, it says melee skills that don't raise a shield deal 20% more damage if you've blocked while using a supported skill recently, 50% more stun threshold for heavy stuns while using supported skills. And this, I believe, actually takes the place of our Steadfast. So it would take the place of Steadfast, and we would put this in here. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to give us a really nice multiplier on all our other abilities, right? So not only now is the Raise Shield a support skill for stunning targets, Not only is it a support skill for defending you against damage, not only is it a support skill for obviously dishing out damage as well, but now you can also utilize it as a support skill to multiply the damage of your other abilities just by simply using Raise Shield in your combination, right? So you just hold down the button, block with it one time, and now for a specific period of time, you have 20% more damage as long as you've blocked recently using this skill, right? Now, another thing that you can potentially do with Raise Shield is you can utilize other abilities that function alongside Raise Shield. So there's a couple of them. We're going to talk about the support gem one first. Trying to remember here. It's called. Why am I forgetting the name of it? There's specific ones that function with abilities that technically are channels. I believe it's channeling. Deadly Resolve. I believe this is the one. Yeah, so supports channeling skills you use yourself. While channeling supported skills periodically gain Deadly Resolve. Expend a stage of Deadly Resolve when an enemy hits you to trigger a deadly slash toward the enemy, dealing more damage based on your armor. So this one in particular, if you throw this in here, is what it's essentially going to do is while you have your shield raised, you're going to notice that the Deadly Resolve stacks are going to gain. And the first monster that hits you, it's going to immediately retaliate against that target with a Deadly Slash according to your armor rating. Another interesting one is Magma Barrier. Magma Barrier is also one that works via raising your shield, and it applies a damage of magma spray to essentially all the targets based on your armor of your shield. And this is going to be fire damage, but this one also works essentially at the same time. So you can essentially stack multiple ways of dishing out damage, like Deadly Resolve, Magma Barrier, and of course the block itself that does its own blocking damage. And then when you go into an attack and you start fighting, what you'll notice is that you have like multiple things going off at the same time toward the targets, right? So let's take a look and see. Like, we already have our Magma Barrier running. And then I'm going to go ahead and get some stacks of Deadly Resolve. So we've got 3 stacks of Deadly Resolve. And we're also using Repulsion as well. And we're getting multiple, basically, effects just for simply raising our shield and hitting the targets. We're getting the Deadly Resolve. We're getting the Magma Barrier explosions, which Magma Spray does have kind of a delay on it. We're also getting the actual block itself. And then we're getting the Repulsion, too, because the blocking is essentially triggering the Repulsion. So you can have lots of things potentially going on here from, like, the total. You can see I just stunned that monster, no problem. What's up, buddy? You want to get stunned too? Oh, these are those ones that are annoying. Haha. You could also use it to armor break if you wanted to. There's a lot of various ways that you could potentially utilize it to your benefit. But as you can clearly see, I've got no problem dealing with most of the monsters, even with a unset up Raise Shield. Because it really just has to do with like your shield itself, right? So the higher your shield scales, the more damage you're going to get out of something like this. The Evasion grants an equal chance to avoid the heavy stun buildup. So this is kind of one that you need to talk about a little bit, is that every time you get hit when you have your raised shield, you're going to gain heavy stun buildup. Now you can have a lot of ways to avoid heavy stun buildup. There's a lot of ways to increase your stun threshold. Increasing your HP is a very good way to avoid stun threshold, because your stun threshold is based on your hit points. You can also gain stun threshold, obviously, by stacking stun threshold on your equipment. Like I have 32 stun threshold here, which isn't a lot, but it's stun threshold. I also have some stun threshold on my shield. I've got 135. And in general, you can stack stun threshold as well as HP. But there's also other things on the board that you can potentially do to deal with heavy stun. Like this one in particular is really nice, Defender's Resolve, which is your heavy stun buildup empties at 50% faster. So instead of it taking like 5 seconds for the heavy stun to start degenerating, it's like it degenerates after like 2.5 instead, which is actually really nice. There's also nodes like this, Polished Iron, which has gained additional stun threshold equal to 30% of your item armor on equipped items, which can make it a lot harder for monsters to stun you. And then Evasion. So if you have Evasion, which if you're running like an armor evasion character, you can essentially avoid the heavy stun entirely. It just gives you a percentage chance that when you get hit, the heavy stun will not accumulate, which is actually very powerful. I have a character already set up on another build that's running about 60% evasion, and that means I have a 60% chance to just avoid the heavy stun buildup entirely on the skill. So if you're going to run Raised Shield, it actually does help to run a hybrid setup like Armor Evasion, because that way you're getting evasion, which you can then avoid the heavy stun buildup entirely. Now, what happens if the heavy stun builds up to the maximum? Well, what happens is you fall down, and the monsters wail on you, and you die. Like 90% of the time, I'd say about 95% of the time, if you're in combat and you get heavy stunned, you're probably going to die. It really just comes down to the fact that, like, being heavy stunned puts you in the ground. It takes away all your defenses, essentially, and all the monsters can just run over and wail on you for free. And until you get up, you really can't stop them, right? So you do want to avoid that heavy stun buildup at all costs, essentially, right? Which is not entirely impossible to do. It's actually pretty easy, in my opinion. But there you have it. A free ability that you can utilize on your character. It does work surprisingly well. There are some good support gem options. It is a good support ability. It is a good damage ability. It is a good stunning ability. It is a good, like, increasing the damage of your other attacks ability. You can even use it for breaking armor, or just simply getting, like, some crazy damage mods like Deadly Resolve, or firing off your Magma Barrier. Speaking of Magma Barrier also gives you endurance charges. So utilizing Raised Shield with Magma Barrier can give you endurance charges, which you could, of course, spend on other things like Warcries, which you also might need to keep in mind. Another thing is that Refutation, which is the ability to parry debuff, works with blocking, right? So technically, even if you have very low block chance, let's pretend you just had like 10% block chance or something, right? And you still want to use Refutation. Well, you totally can. The reason why Raised Shield works with Refutation is because technically all attacks that come in count as a block when you have your shield raised, regardless of what your block chance is. So it is a 100% chance to block attacks while your shield is raised. So, in other words, if you are running into a battle and you tap Refutation before you get into the fight, and then you hold up your shield, what you'll notice is that every single monster that hits you is going to get the parry debuff on them because they are blocking, right? You're blocking their attacks. And Raised Shield is a 100% block chance in return for heavy stun buildup. So you're going to constantly see that Refutation appear on the targets. As long as you have Refutation up, you'll see that parry debuff keep appearing on them, which is also a really good way that you can potentially use Raised Shield, which is just simply an easy way to apply the ability. Now, let's talk about an evasion character, right? So let's say you're an evasion character and you're not getting hit. You can't block an attack that can't be hit, right? So if you're using Refutation, even if you have high block chance, like if you evade the attack before you block it, well, then you won't actually get hit. Well, another thing that Raised Shield does, which is very interesting, is it allows you to bypass evasion. If you read it correctly here, it says you cannot evade while your shield is raised, which means that your evasion stat is useless. But your evasion instead grants an equal chance to avoid heavy stun buildup, which essentially allows you to bypass your evasion when you need to. So even if you are a high evasion character, you can utilize something like Parry, or you can utilize something like Raised Shield to essentially bypass the normal evasion of your character so that you can apply Refutation to any target, giving you 100% block chance during that time period, right? I think that's pretty much everything for this ability. I hope I've impressed upon you just how useful Raised Shield can potentially be in a build. As always, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe button if you enjoy the content, and keep watching.